So this is a joint work with Paul Baudry, Fabrice Collard, Alain Gay, and Franck Portier. And as the title says, this is dynamic identification in vector autoregressions. So if we look at over the last 40 years, two main ways have been used to develop business cycles theory in applied macro. On one way is that the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium models, DSGs, and structural vector autoregressions. They are not mutually exclusive. I do not pretend that we must use either DSGs or structural VRs. Paper by Larry and Marty have shown that we can combine the two in order to develop models and business cycle theories. It's just, I posit two main approaches. But in both approaches, the economic fluctuations are viewed as a combination of endogenous and exogenous driving forces. Okay? So the approach that we develop in this paper is a middle ground between DSGs and structural vector autoregressions, and trying to take advantage of both approaches. I mean, the parsimony of DSG models and the flexibility of vector autoregressions. So here, in DSG and the structural VR literature, there exist two essential objects, among others, but two essential objects. The first one is, especially in DSGs, is the autoregressive matrix denoted R here, of the exogenous driving forces, I denote ZT. Okay? And the second, this is the first important object, and the second very important object is what I call the loading matrix, F, of structural shocks. So, what is F? F is just a way to measure the impact response of endogenous variables to structural shocks denoted epsilon t. After, you can add the dynamics. Is a vector of variables that depend on this loading matrix times the structural shocks plus the dynamic propagations. Okay. So first, this F matrix is essential. Okay. And the second one is this autoregressive matrix that summarizes the stochastic process of exogenous driving forces in the economy. So in the DSG models, the F matrix, the loading matrix, appear when you compute the solution of the model, taking a set of structural parameters, taking the organization of the R matrix, you solve your models, and at the end, when you solve your model, F is naturally computed as the solution of the model. So it is an essential object in DSG models. But in DSG models, it is a very complex object because it is the nonlinear functions of the deep models parameter together with the dynamic properties of exogenous variable. But, okay, and so the F matrix is a solution, and R matrix will, together with the structural parameter, will help to obtain the solution for F. In structural VR, it's a little bit different because the model is less structural on the dynamics. So the R matrix, the autoregressive matrix, is not explicitly specified. It is implicit in the VR. In the reduced, VR is a reduced form. So it is implicit, but it never appears in an explicit way. But at the same time, a structural VR has to impose some restriction on the loading matrix in order to identify shocks. I will come back later on which type of restriction we can include in this F matrix, but you need this restriction. And you see what we try to do in this paper. What we have to do is that we will look at condition for identification of structural shocks. What I mean by condition identification of structural shock, identification of the element of the F matrix, without imposing restriction on this F matrix. Okay? By exploiting Y, by only exploiting the restrictions on the dynamic structure of exogenous, unobserved forcing variables in the system. In other words, what we want to do is that which type of organization of this autoregressive matrix that is present in DSG models and implicitly in VR, which form of R matrix allow to fully identify all the elements of the loading matrix. And this is why we call it dynamic DSVR for dynamic identification, because all the identification is obtained by inspecting which type of restriction on R allows to identify all the structural shock in the economy. So to fix ideas, In a DG model, what is the job of a DG model? Is putting restriction on R. You remember, in DG models, we have a collection of shocks. Typically, we have n shocks that follow an autoregressive process of order 1, mainly in most of papers, autoregressive process of order 1, and all the innovation of these shocks are mutually orthogonal. So it's just a collection. So R is just a diagonal matrix. On the diagonal element are the autoregressive parameters associated to the R1 process. Okay? And we have restrictions on F because the model is highly constrained. We have cross-equation restriction created by the rational expectation equilibrium. The VR SVR approach, no restriction on R, but you put restriction on F. Either zero restriction, for example, or long-run restriction, or sign restrictions, whatever you can imagine, but you have to impose restriction in order to uncover structural shocks. And you see, to summarize, our approach is that which type of organization of R allow to freely identify F. So it's a general problem. It's a general problem. And what we will use later, I will continue to use the label VR or SVR, but implicitly, all the identification is achieved from a state space representation of the dynamic system. But you know that if I observe all the elements in the state space, my model admits a VR representation of some order. Or if I observe only a subset of this, it will follow a VR moving average representation. So the paper contains two applications, no more, but here today I will present two applications. So I'm a little bit anxious with the second one, but I decided to present last minute, so to avoid any nasty remarks. So I present the first application in a simple bivariate VR à la Blanchard-Anquois, okay? And I propose to revisit or just discussing our approach regarding Cristiano-Eichenbaum events about the identification of shocks to monetary policy. But the paper contains many other results, applications, formal derivations of identifications that we will not present today. Okay? So estimation and inference, for example, we discuss all of these aspects. Formal identification results that we will not present. I will present by means of examples, of economic examples, with a general state space representation, okay, with Varma. Simulation, I will not present some simulation experiments that we conduct using new Keynesian models that we simulate with three shocks in order to inspect if our approach is able to properly uncover the structural shocks. Or we simulate a RBC type model. And so typically without observing capital stock, estimating Varma, blah, blah, blah. And in big sample, the approach works very well, very well. This is not a problem of truncation bias or something like that. So the approach works well. And I do not discuss, we revisit Gertler-Karady that use a proxy VR models in order to identify shocks to monetary policy. This is in the paper, I do not revisit. And we have another application to international business cycle. Okay? So, okay, so I will skip, as usual, I don't know why I put this slide, and every time I say I will skip it. No, just very quickly, the first paper that discuss this middle ground between VR and RBC type model, or DSG model, is Magratan. To be honest, this is the first one. But she have only very partial results about identifications. The model that she used is very special. You cannot fully anticipate is that a model with a permanent technology shocks and the stationary labor wage shocks. So this is not a general DSG representation. In the paper, we have all the results for a very generic representation of the state space. The first one we have the good intuition is Pagan and Robinson, but they just look at necessary condition. They just count the number of parameters to be identified. It's far from being sufficient. I will show you. It's far from being sufficient. But the closest paper to ours, but hopefully is done by econometricians and statisticians, so you have almost no economics in the paper. It's a paper by Goureiro and Jasiak that is published in Journal of Multivariate Analysis, something like that. They have a similar condition for identification, but I will rediscuss this aspect when I will present you some results. So I will organize my presentation by introducing first the DSVR. Okay. I will discuss by means of illustration the identification, and I will present an application with shocks to monetary policy. So as I say, there exist many options in structural VR literature in order to identify this key matrix that is the loading matrix F. Okay, but here the most very popular identification scheme are the short-run restriction and the long-run. There exist many others. Max shares, sign restrictions, blah, blah, blah. Okay, proxy VR, and so on. But the short run, so short run, it's just, you agree, it's just putting some zeros. You put some zeros, meaning that on impact, some shocks have no effect on some variables. Okay? So zeros, direct. But long run is not zeros on F. It's not zeros, but it's the same. Exactly the same. It's zeros on the long run covariance matrix. After you recombine with the autoregressive matrix of the VR, and F is not with zeros, but is constrained. So it's putting restriction on F. So this is a good way, for example, if we are able to identify F without imposing any restriction on F, is a good way to test existing identification scheme. This is why we propose to revisit on one side Blanchard and Coix, and the second, Christian Reichenbaum-Evans. Okay. Obviously, we do not compare to DSG models. We never estimate the model's deep parameter. Our approach is more flexible, I mean. So we do not estimate this nonlinear combination obtained on the reduced form, but only the process of the shock, together with the loading matrix on additional dynamics if needed. Okay? So we just exploit the state space representation, okay, with any dynamic model with an observed shocks. And Morten, depending if you observe some variables or not, the dynamic structure is more complex, but the idea is the same. And what is interesting is that our objective is to identify this famous loading matrix, F, without imposing any restriction on it. So this opens the possibility to test and evaluate particular organization of this matrix, as done by the literature. So now let me use a simple linear representation of any DSG models. I start with the DSG models. So a purely forward-looking models, linear, okay, purely forward-looking, under rational expectation. Xt is a vector of endogenous variables. Zt, as I've previously introduced, is a vector of unobserved exogenous variables. Et is a conditional expectation operator, and theta is a vector of structural parameters, of deep parameters that represent preferences, technology, market organization, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Everything. So here, I assume that Zt, as usual in the DSG literature, Zt, the collection of shocks, follow an autoregressive process of order 1, and all shocks are mutually orthogonal. So I follow 99% of DSG models, something like that. So, okay, so orthogonal, diagonal, but in the paper, this will be always maintained, because without that, we cannot distinguish between causes and consequences. But this, we will investigate other organization of this matrix, okay? Not only diagonal. Okay, so I suppose that the economy is regular, so I solve the economy forward, and the solution will express the set of endogenous variables as a linear function of the unobserved shocks. Okay? But here is the DSG, so it depends on theta, the set of structural parameters, and R, the autoregressive matrix. Okay? But here, what we do, the main difference with DSG is that we relax the cross-equation restriction imposed by the forward-looking solution. And so F is free now. We have no cross-equation restriction. All the entries of F are totally free. And what we want to do is to identify all the elements of this matrix. Okay? So the main advantage, you have no restriction. Suppose that, typically. Suppose that I'm able to identify, given some restriction on R, not here, I'm able to fully identify F. I can test the cross-equation restriction created by any DSG models. Okay? So now, you see that because I have xt as a linear function of f, what I do, I use the dynamic property of z, that is ft, the inverse of f times xt. I put it here, and you see immediately that at the end, this simple forward-looking model admits a VR1 representation. But you see immediately also the restrictions that have been created by the latent dynamic structure of the any models. Because why? F appears here, and F together with R will appear at this stage. This is why we call it dynamic identification. And I will show you examples for which, for some organization of the R matrix, for which you cannot identify. Okay? So here, this is our DSVR. As you see, you start to see the picture of the paper. In a DSG language, this will be the same. F will be a nonlinear function of theta on R, and this has the more restricted form compared to the DSVR. And finally, what is an unrestricted VR? It's just of order 1. This gamma matrix is unrestricted, you agree? It's totally flexible. The UT is not a structural shock, it's a canonical innovation. But if I impose some restrictions on a matrix that link canonical innovation to structural shock, I can recover some structural shocks. You know that we impose that the canonical innovation have zero mean on a covariance matrix sigma. And you see immediately the mapping between, no, not the DSG and the DSVR, but between the DSVR and the VR. And what is this mapping? This is this one. So here we have, in order to retrieve F on R, we have to satisfy that the autoregressive matrix of order 1 must satisfy this relationship, plus the fact that the covariance matrix is equal to FF prime. Okay? So now what you can do, let me start with necessary condition, not sufficient. Okay? I start with necessary. I count the number. So how many number I have? In F is free. I want to identify all the elements in the loading matrix, n square. And I have assumed that R, the autoregressive matrix, is diagonal, n plus n square. Here, on the other side, I have, sorry, in the dynamic matrix of the VR, I have n square parameter, and because the covariance matrix is symmetric, I have n times n plus 1 divided by 2. You see immediately that if n is strictly larger than 1, 2, 3, 4, the system is over-identified. Okay? So the flexible, unrestricted VR contains more parameters than the DSVR. So potentially, on the necessary condition, the model is identified, but is far from being sufficient. Okay? But if either necessary or insufficient condition are satisfied, we can test now our DSVR regarding a flexible VR, because it's more restricted compared to the VR. So we can test, we can develop a specification test and test the dynamic restrictions that we have imposed are rejected or not by the data. So let me show you two simple examples to show that it's far from being sufficient. How many time?
You still have 40 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'm not so much. Okay, two examples. Let me start with lack of dynamics, no dynamics. R is equal to 0, n. So you see immediately, go back here, if this matrix will disappear, xt is purely static, so it's not identified. You cannot, because the covariance matrix is symmetric. So you have to impose what we have to do, as in VRs. In structural VRs, you impose restriction on F. You have to impose a restriction on F in order to identify some elements of F. Okay? So this is the first case. The second one is very restricted. So you can think that so I assume that all the autoregressive parameters associated to the exogenous variables are the same. So at the first stage, you can think, you impose a lot of restriction with that. So you have to estimate less parameters compared to the previous case. No, because what you see immediately, with all elements being equal, you see that this matrix do not contain F. This matrix do not contain F. F will disappear. So xt is equal rho times the identity matrix is t minus 1. So just meaning that all the dynamics of X are the same, of all the elements of X are the same, plus F of epsilon. You see again that I lose information here. I lose information. So I cannot identify the element of a matrix F from the dynamic structure of the model. And in fact, what we have here, we have just a collection of collinear impulse response functions. And this impulse response function differ on what? Just the scaling parameter, they enter in F. But with this scaling parameter, you have to make a normalization at some point if you want to identify. So you need to put restriction on F. So it's just a collection. If you take the ratio of each ERF is constant. So you have no dynamic identification. So the point is that dynamic identification can be obtained only for particular or with some restriction, informative restriction on the R matrix. Okay, so some remarks. So if you are able to identify, you see that here compare, but it's an endless discussion, the first point, is that we put no prior label on shocks. Okay? In many cases, we put some labels on shocks. So just think about, for example, long-run restrictions. You put labels on technology shocks or supply shocks. Okay? You put ex ante, you put prior label. Or, for example, in your paper on monetary policy shocks, monetary policy shocks are shocks that move, for example, in small VAR, not in the complete one, but in small VAR, the only shocks that change the policy rate, the monetary policy rate on impact. Okay? Not output, not inflation, and so on. Okay? But it's an endless discussion. Is that what is true is that we are able to solve a problem, a complex problem of n unknown with n equations, something like that. But I will discuss after the way we can address this issue. What is important is that when our DSVR is over-identified, we can test the restriction, the dynamic restriction created by this model. You have just to use the VR model, unrestricted VR model, as an auxiliary model that is totally flexible, and just test for the over-identifying restrictions using a G-test à la Hansen, if you prefer. At the same time, because your matrix is totally free, the F matrix is identified and totally free, we can test or evaluate existing identification scheme. For example, we can test the zero restrictions in Cristiano-Ekebom events, for example. Okay, let me show very quickly an example using a bivariate VAR with two variables that include the growth rate of real GDP per capita and unemployment rate à la Blanchard-Anquois. We estimated prior to the financial crisis. If I have time, I will show why, because I want to illustrate a point on the critics of Blanchard-Anquois. So what we do, we start with an unrestricted VR. We estimate it, use it as an auxiliary model to estimate your dynamic restrictions. The test shows that we do not reject, so we continue. We recover the shocks from our approach. We have two shocks simultaneously identified. We call it epsilon 1, epsilon 2, no label. And we compare to Blanchard-Anquois long-run identification restriction. You remember, Blanchard-Anquois identify a permanent shock as a supply shock. That's the only shock that move real GDP in the long run. Okay? So this is what we obtain. So here, because we try to put the shock together, okay? Epsilon 1 will be with epsilon P, permanent shock, and epsilon 2 with epsilon transitory, okay? You see that very similar. You agree? Very, very similar. But here, Blanchard-Anquois is obtained with long-run restriction. Here, we just assume that the latent two shocks, okay, Z1 and Z2, unobserved by the econometrician, follow an autoregressive process, and orthogonal. Okay? For the one.
Then one may conclude that it's fine to use Blanchard.
Yeah, it's better to use Blanchard-Anquois because here we use nonlinear estimation techniques that are very unstable. So, but we have no expertise and skill on that, so I can help you. Okay, but I have another example that, okay, we will try to destroy a little bit Blanchard-Anquois. Yeah, I just finished. Variance decomposition, I will proceed almost the same, you see. So by construction, Blanchard-Anquois is 100% and 0. You see the number are almost the same. And and the correlation of epsilon 1 with epsilon P, epsilon, this is a typo, epsilon 2 with epsilon, the transitory shock in Blanchard-Anquois is close to 1. So, okay, so we did the same as Blanchard-Coix, but Blanchard-Coix is only ordinarily square, so it takes less, is immediate, the computation is immediate, with yours it is not immediate.
Maybe an artifact of having just two shots.
Not easy. They are orthogonal. Now I will show you it's not an artifact. Okay, so now what I do is that I include financial crisis. Okay? What I know from the financial crisis, huge trend breaks. You agree? Huge trend breaks. The problem of Blanchard-Coix is an identification techniques that use long-run restrictions. So something, an object that is very badly measured is a spectral density at zero frequency, or badly. You propose, for example, to make some non-parametric corrections in one of your papers on technology shocks, but it is very sensitive to low-frequency movement. So when you extend the sample, first of all, this is our DSVR still. And if you compare to previously, exactly the same number. Our DSVR extended the sample does not change. Okay? But Blanchard-Coix, this is a new Blanchard-Coix this, Blanchard-Coix this, Blanchard-Coix. So Blanchard-Coix give a very different pictures.
Really curious if you ever looked at the Gali controversy about whether employment goes up or down for technology.
Okay.
A huge debate there. And what was the trend?
Yeah, exactly. You remember the paper by Fernald also. Fernald, the discussion at Fernald is about the break in the trend of TFP. And the debate that you have with Jordi is about the way you specify hours worked in the VR. Level versus first difference in deviation from trends or quadratic trends, blah, blah, blah. No, we do not investigate. Okay, I will be a second critic, Stéphane. That is a limitation of our approach, is that when you have to treat highly persistent variables, for which the rows of the latent shocks, an observed shock, become closer and closer to 1, to unit root. And typically we start to try, but you know the problem with our work in US is highly persistent with very low frequency movement, as already shown by Valérie Ramet, for example. And this, when we start, because our techniques is highly nonlinear in terms of estimation, when you are closer and closer to 1, the algorithm will break. Okay, so this is the problem that we have. This is why we do not insist. Here we have unemployment, this is clearly stationary, and output growth, so we have no problem. So last point is that after we correct for the trend break, okay? If you correct for the trend break and the breaks and the slow recovery in US, you correct for that, you reintroduce Blanchard-Coix, Blanchard-Coix give no result very close to our approach. But the main difference is that our approach, because we do not need to use long-run restriction, is free of this break. So we just skip some technical details about that. Identification is based on observationally equivalence between using autocovariance functions or spectral density. Okay? And we perturb the set of parameters, and we see that the only matrix that provides the same representation is the identity matrix. In this case, this is identified. Okay? So now, let me consider the configuration of R matrix that we inspect for identification. The first is the most popular in DSG models. R is diagonal. R is lower triangular. I didn't find any paper with a lower triangular, but we inspect it. Okay? I discovered that, for example, models with news on unexpected shocks can have this type of triangular representation. Because you see immediately the effect of the news, the lag effect that appear in the dynamic. The R symmetric is very well known in international real business cycle. All this literature that treat two-country models with symmetric two-country models use this R symmetric, but I do not present this. Oui, Bacchus Keokiland among many others. And finally, partial identification. I will discuss this issue. So let me show you, okay, the main results that we have. If you have this autoregressive representation, and if all the elements of R are different, okay, all the rows are different, you can identify the DSVR. Okay? So in order to illustrate this, Suppose that I use basic new Keynesian models, okay, 3 equation new Keynesian models with the Euler equation, the pricing equation, the monetary policy, and I include only 2 shocks, Z1 and Z2, only on the 2 first equations. I will discuss an additional shock after. So I know that under the Taylor principle, blah, 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 the model is forward-looking. So xt is a linear function of the 2 shocks. And in xt, I have output on inflation. Okay? I have output in inflation. And I want to recover freely if I solve the DG is not F11, F12, F21, F22. It's a non-linear combination of all the model's parameters together with the shock persistence. But here, my matrix S is free. So I want to identify these 4 elements. And to simplify the computation, let me assume that one shock is serially uncorrelated, whereas the second can be serially correlated. Okay? So if I put rho equal to 0, you see immediately the problem. Okay? So now, and the question is that, is it possible from this organization to identify this? And what I do, as we did formally in the paper, we use either the spectral density or the autocovariance function to see, you know that if I know the autocovariance function, I know everything, because I can express all parameters of any model in terms of autocovariance. So here I compute the variance of y. You see that the first shock is serially uncorrelated, so it's the first entry of the F matrix. The second one is serially correlated. If I compute the autocovariance function for higher order h equal 1, 2, 3, 4, I have this expression. Why? Because the first shock is serially uncorrelated, so it depends only on that. You see immediately that the model you can identify. For example, take the autocovariance between at order 2 divided by the autocovariance at order 1. You retrieve what? You retrieve rho. If I know rho, I know F12. If I know F12 from the variance of output, I know F11. Okay? So now from the observation of output, I can identify the DSVR. And if I redo the same, I redo the same for inflation, I can now retrieve this entry, okay? And I can also obtain an estimation of rho, just meaning that probably from the observation on output and inflation, the model is over-identified, because there exist 2 ways to identify rho. Morten.
I'm just wondering the relationship between this and McKay-Wolf or Barnechon-Mesters.
What?
So McKay and Wolf paper.
McKay?
And Econometrica, were basically estimating they're doing. You can do the policy counterfactuals. Plus response functions. And this seems like this is kind of doing the same. I mean, you're just doing that on the autocovariances, but
yeah.
Wouldn't if I compute the impulse responses, I would sort of get.
Our main message is that if your shocks have the same dynamics, you have a collection of collinear impulse response functions that are not identified up to a scale factor. That's exactly what the claim of our identification.
Yeah. So here you could sort of say, listen, if I estimate that Larry and Marty's VAR, from that I could also say, like, listen, if I put another person in the Fed, then I could say what would have happened with inflation this time around.
Yeah, so except that if I have to, is that we have no prior label on our shocks, so this is a limitation of what we do. We need the help of other VRs in order to put labels.
So in your case, you're not, so they are putting restriction on to identify the shock, and then you can use the impulse responses. You're sort of going the opposite way.
But that's kind of like a sign restriction at the very end. You could say,
yeah, or visual inspection. Yeah. This look like the demon shocks. This look like the
in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Put a label on.
Yeah, with prior some economic theory priors. Okay, given the existing literature. I have another illustration. If this is the same rows, you see if the 2 shocks have the same rows, you cannot, because everything can be factorized by rho. So you see immediately, everything can be factorized by rho. You see, exactly the same. But you cannot separate the two. So this is the idea of two collinear impulse response functions. So the response of output to the first shock or the second shock are not the same in absolute value, but in terms of dynamics, they are the same. You cannot separate. Okay, so let me show you partial identification. Suppose that now I include a third shock in the new Keynesian models. And let me consider the worst case for identification. What I do, so I have a shock, demand shock, supply shocks, and a shocks to monetary policy. And what I do, the first two shocks, you see, 0, 0, the same dynamics. So I'm very worst case. So you can fully anticipate that I cannot identify. But let me consider that the shocks to monetary policy is persistent. Okay? So if I do that and I use again the autocovariance function, I will see that, you see what you see? From the autocovariance function of y, sorry, I can identify rho. If I can identify rho, I can identify this entry, okay? But at the end, I cannot separate the first two. So I can, even in this worst case, I call it partial identification. I'm not able to identify the demand shock and the supply shock, but I continue to identify the shocks to monetary policy. This is the sense of your question? Okay. You repeat the same operation on inflation on interest rate, on nominal interest rate, and at the end, you will be able to identify the third column, but not the two first. You only partially identify the system. But it continues to work, partially.
So there on top you can test the zero restriction.
We can test for zero. Here, wait, it's nice. Okay, I see your point. Suppose that I'm in this situation. Existing structural VR impose zeros here and here. So typically, I can continue to test. I can identify all the macroeconomic effects in this small system of shocks to monetary policy. All. And, okay, so an application. I have 5 minutes.
You can also take a marginal R, or the R is imposed. You can take a diagonal row 1, row 2.
Okay, we investigate, but okay, at the end you cannot fully, sorry, your R matrix cannot be full. You cannot identify. The most that you can do is, for example, to assume upper triangular or lower triangular. In this case, the system becomes just identified. So the VR and the DSVR are exactly the same. Exactly the same. But here, lower triangular, except if you have examples, I don't know, economic examples of DSG with lower triangular R. I don't know. And just think that in terms of dynamics, you perturbate a little bit the dynamics, but most of the dynamics are given, you agree, with the diagonal matrix. The eigenvalue of R are given by the diagonal elements. With the lower triangular, it's the same. So in terms of dynamic properties, this is the same. Now you agree? This is exactly because lower triangular, so the eigenvalue of this lower triangular matrix is the same as the diagonal one. So, sorry. So the application. So Larry and Marty, you will not have time to react. So now, I remember at the conference, Frank Portier discussed some of your results on monetary SVR. And he said, it's not robust or something like that. And Larry opened his laptop, and he turned the laptop, wrong. So you estimate, I remember we have different types of structural VRs that include 5, 7 variables. Here we take a 5 one, with federal fund rates, log of real GDP, unemployment rate, consumer price index, commodity prices, 4 lakhs, okay? So the CE, monetary policy shock, is an innovation to federal fund rate orthogonal to the other variables on impact. We use the same samples as yours. We do not update because we just want to compare. We identify our DSVR using the same data, the same sample. we first estimate, as you did before making your Cholesky decomposition, you estimate your DSVR from the unrestricted VR. We have a lot of over-identifying restriction because we have 5 variables, no? So we test for that. Our model is not rejected by the unrestricted VR. So we can continue to... Oh, sorry. The question is that do we find a shock that looks like CE shocks? The CE shock. The CE shock. So what we have to do? So we have, you remember, you in your paper you have identified 1 shock, the shock to monetary policy. But here we simultaneously, as Martin, simultaneously identify 5 shocks, and which type of shock look like your shocks. So what we do, we compute the response of the nominal interest rates to the 5 shocks, and compare of the nominal interest to the 5 shocks, and compare to your shocks. Okay? And we rank in an ascending number in terms of discrepancy. And you see that a shock that we call or label epsilon 1 looks like very close to your shock. Okay? Very close to your shock. In terms of mean square error, you see that the others are less and less good candidates. So let me continue with a fair exercise. Let me select epsilon 1. And what I have to do, and very nice results, is that before looking at the impulse response function and testing for the 0 restrictions in your VR, let me compare the epsilon 1, epsilon 2, epsilon 3, epsilon 4, and 5 to your shock. Here is the correlation between your monetary policy shock with the 5 epsilons that we identify. The first one is highly positively correlated, you see? Is larger than 0.9. The second one is close to 0. The second one is slightly negative. The fourth, 0. The last, 0. So it seems that there exists only 1 candidate that looks like your shock. And what we claim is that there exists an epsilon 1 in your DSVR that looks like very as your monetary policy shock.
But the candidates have to they do have to satisfy the variance.
Yeah, everything.
But then,
orthogonality.
Just for a second. Okay, so first of all, that space it's a measure of it's not 5. There's a continuum of other rotations.
Yeah, sure.
And all of them would have this kind of problem.
He has cross equation restrictions.
Yeah, we are over-identified with restrictions. It's not the same. What we have to satisfy, I go back. Just again, Larry, just think about my simple example. These are. We have to satisfy this. You have your equation. I have to satisfy the covariance matrix that create restriction on F, and I have to satisfy dynamic restrictions. And the last point.
But again, if I was only identifying 1 shock, then that would disappear.
Yeah.
Then I'm back. Then I'm in the case that Larry is talking about. That I'm imposing untestable restrictions.
No, okay. The table that we have shown is just to test if this is different from this on impact. Only. You agree that I'm able, this is a random variable. The impulse response function from your DSVR is a random variable that have some mean value with dispersions. And I just inspect if 0 is within the confidence interval for a given level of the test. That's all. Okay? So what you obtain is that we have different pictures to compare to yours, but in terms of statistical inference, the 2 models deliver very similar results. And what is interesting, you remember this controversy, other controversy about the price puzzle. You remember that we have this price puzzle in some of your paper, and we have this discussion, and we obtain and we evaluate it in many other monetary SVAR. We've obtained that price puzzle is not a curiosity, but much more a robust finding in the data. So meaning, for example, that we have to change some of models. I'm not do not present some of the models that include, for example, a cost channel in the pricing equation or something like that.
Let me just put it on this point. The output is really very interesting because you look, so we always hated that output goes up.
Yeah, look at inflation goes up and output goes up is not a monetary policy shock, it's a demand shock.
Well, I think
but
saving us over here is the gray, there's a lot of statistical uncertainty.
yes,
That's our 0 restriction that you're not rejecting. And then
because
you see that we're just on the bottom of the grid.
Yeah.
This is what's saving us.
Yeah.
So Patrick, I'm sorry, but
No, I was too long.
Do you want to show us the very nice
No.
picture you have, or?
No, I like this. I like this one. No, the best one is this one. It just says that I have finished, but.
Oh my God, that's gonna scare.
We can take a little break.